These town halls are happening in communities across the province, and I've had the opportunity to go as far north as Fort McMurray and as far south as Medicine Hat and points in between. Next week I'm heading up northwest. But I can tell you, bringing AUPE members together in their communities, facing the same struggles, facing the same demands at the bargaining table, regardless of who their bosses are, building that sense of solidarity and support amongst them has been inspirational. And I can tell you, I can report back to you from the hinterlands of Alberta, the mood is building out there. I can feel it. I can feel AUPE members finding their strength, finding their voice, and are absolutely determined to win in these rounds of negotiations. And I know you share that with them too. I just want to say that these town halls that are happening are one part of a very ambitious strategic plan that the provincial executive developed last December. And that whole strategic plan is based on providing whatever support we can to all of our members in bargaining. As you'll hear from Bobby Joe, if you don't mind me stealing one of your lines, we have 82,000 members in bargaining in 2024 out of our 100,000 members. Our whole focus as a union is to support our members in their struggle to get the collective agreements and the pay that they deserve. That's the entire focus, and this is part of what you're involved in now. And I want to give a shout out to the vice presidents who have and are facilitating these town halls. They're doing a phenomenal job, and I'm really proud to stand with them and watch them in action. It just shows how united the executive committee is as well in defending your rights to fair collective agreements. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Bobby Joe. Please enjoy this evening, ask your questions, and let's get out there and get them.
Let me start first of all by thanking you for being here tonight.
So welcome everyone to our town hall meeting here in Calgary, one of the two we're doing today.
So welcome to one of your town halls, one of our town halls.
I am Bonnie Gostola. I am the Vice President assigned to the Calgary region.
My name is Bobby Jo Brody, and I have the privilege of being one of the AUPE Vice Presidents, and I am assigned to the Edmonton region.
My name is Darren Graham. I'm the Vice President assigned to the Central region, which is basically everything between Calgary and Edmonton, and then border to border.
So again, welcome to one of 53 town halls that have been held all across this province in the month of June. So what are we doing here? Why is this so important? We have 82,000 members in bargaining as we speak. And when I say that number, everybody has to understand, we have 100,000 members. So those 82,000 speaking on behalf of their members in their various bargaining teams are actually at the tables looking to get better agreements for 100,000 members, not just those 82,000, because at some point those members will be affected by what happens at these bargaining tables.
And so those other AUP members that currently aren't in negotiations are also being asked to come out and engage with us in our bargaining as well. Because as we know, the larger tables usually set the pattern for negotiations.
Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, go through a broad overview of the current state of bargaining across the union. I have been referring to this as the State of the Union update, pun intended, okay? So we're going to talk about where we are at as a union overall. And when we do that, we really are focusing on our tables, who we consider to be the key influencers in this round of bargaining. Sometimes they're referred to as the big tables, but what they are, more importantly, is they are the tables that are going to set the stage and the direction for how bargaining is going to roll out over this next year.
And the larger tables that we're really paying attention to, the public tables that we're paying attention to, are the Government of Alberta, the Alberta Health Services tables, so AHS, GSS, and nursing care, which represents actually about half of AUPE for the membership. We have members also in negotiations in Covenant Health, and they're provincial as well. Our biggest table in the ed sector that we're really paying attention to right now as well, and they're kind of taking a bit of a lead on negotiations, is the University of Calgary. And then we're also really paying attention to the Alberta Liquor, Gaming and Cannabis Commission table out of the boards and agency side.
I want to really point out the reason these are called time for action is because this is the time for our membership to start stepping up and taking action.
And the reason why it is time for action is because we want to ensure that members understand that bargaining gains do not actually happen at the bargaining table. And sometimes folks think that statement is a bit odd, but it's 100% true. Now, trust me when I say that each of you who engaged in the election process of electing your bargaining representatives, or bargaining rock stars, as I like to call them, you elected the best people. They are going to sit at that table with the negotiator across from the employer, and they are going to do everything that they can because they are capable and they are competent to get a better collective agreement. But ultimately, the responsibility does not rest on the shoulders of those individuals.
Because it's really imperative that we recognize we have to take action at our work sites, within our communities, and across the province, and if necessary, to the streets.
And it doesn't matter if you belong to separate employers who belong to our membership, members out of Local 48, members out of Local 84, members out of Local 47, who all represent healthcare, separate employees, a lot of private for-profit employees. Those tables will be influenced as well and will get the gains that we are going to get at our next tables. Yes, clap for that, I like that, yes, because we are gonna get those gains.
And we need to start with essentially how we got here and why we are all sitting in this town hall right now. So in the fall of 2023, AUPE hosted 5 bargaining conferences. We held one for each of the sectors that AUPE represents, and when it came to healthcare, just like I did in the introduction, we broke them out into our AHS, Covenant, Lamont folks, and our long-term care folks.
And the whole thing was to identify and come up with those common themes that are impacting all of us that were going into negotiations. And like I said, in 2024, that's 82,000 AUP members.
We identified, or the membership, those negotiating teams identified 4 common issues.
Number 1 being increased wages. Number 2, increased job security protections. Number 3, the need for better benefits with a focus on mental health supports.
And then finally, the biggest animal in the room for most of us is our workloads and working short. We really need to address those issues with our employers.
As bargaining groups, we talked about the fact that we felt, based on conversations that we had had with our coworkers and our colleagues, that those were in fact the 4 key issues, but we wanted to make sure. And so then what we did is we broke off into respective bargaining committees, and we talked about what we were going to include in the bargaining surveys, what questions would be included in there. Those surveys that were sent out to members included questions that covered those 4 common goals that I talked about, as well as nuanced questions that were specific to the worksite and or the bargaining unit. And then of course we ended the surveys with, what else do you want the bargaining committee to know?
And what we really noted right away is not only do the members agree, those 82,000 members agree with the first 4, they were very strongly in agreement. It was very overwhelming, the response to those questions specifically on the surveys.
And it'll probably come as no surprise to anyone that they all prioritized increased wages. The second thing is that those surveys were vital in drafting ingoing proposals that were to be or will be exchanged with your employer. Because it was that survey that gave members an opportunity to direct the bargaining committee at the bargaining table so that they knew what was important to you and what they needed to focus on this round of bargaining. Now, since the surveys were used to prepare ingoing proposals, and because they came from different bargaining groups where the needs and the wants of the members are a little bit different, it means that the ingoing proposals were not all the same, which is fair. That's the way it should be. But they did in fact all have that common thread, in that they included the 4 common goals that I just talked about. Now, most of the proposals have already been exchanged, definitely amongst our key influencers, with the exception of AGLC. But they have already been exchanged with the employer, and in all of those other cases, the employer has also provided their ingoing monetary proposal. Wait for it, folks. It's all the same. Not a single proposal has come from an employer that was different with respect to monetary.
When I say the employer, what I really mean is the government. Because I want to make sure everybody here knows that at every single one of these large tables, there's a representative from the government sitting there and watching. They are there to record the information and what the union is saying, and they're also there to make sure that the negotiating team from your employers is not stepping out of line. So they're the babysitter in the room, essentially. Your employer can't even negotiate anything that's outside of that mandate without first consulting with them. That's language or monetary.
And they have pretty much offered the same thing to everyone. 2% in the first year, 2% in the second year, 1.75% third year, 1.75% in the fourth year.
I know. Now, those people who know me well know that I don't math well, but even I can add those little numbers in my head. And that comes out to 7.5% over 4 years.
That's basically what inflation was in this province in 2022, 1 year alone. So really, our employers need to come up by at least another 18.4%, just so you guys can spend your money the same way that you are now, right? It's inflation and our employers, and especially our government, not recognizing it, which is making it so hard to make ends meet. That's why we have individuals that are working 2, 3 jobs just to pay the bills, right? Having AUPE members, government sector workers, having to utilize food banks and everything like that when you're working full-time is absolutely shameful.
Okay. So let me ask you, do you want more than 7.5%? Do you deserve more than 7.5%? Of course you do. And folks, that's why this round of bargaining is going to be incredibly challenging.
So we are now intentionally and strategically combining all the forces in our union to actually get information shared amongst every table that is bargaining at this moment. And we are looking at building that solidarity, which is imperative to having success at those tables. That's why we're here today.
So I'm really wanting to make sure that everybody's thinking about it. We're just not going out for like a big wage increase, right? No, we're out there, we're fighting for better wages so that we can actually put food on the table on a regular basis. We can pay our rent, we can do the rest of that. We're out there fighting for job security so that we maintain our jobs, we maintain the services that we offer within our communities, and we provide that stability within our communities. There's a lot of folks I know in rural Alberta that kept the wolf on the doorstep during the downturn in oil, right? Their spouses lost their jobs, and they were the ones that were able to keep the bills paid. And I'm sorry, now with the inflation rates that they are, I don't think that would happen again. And so I'm painting a little bit of a bleak picture, but this is why it's so important that we engage in this round of negotiations. This is why it's so important that you guys are here tonight. And it's great that you're here tonight. And thank you so much for coming out. Because it's through engagement, and it's through taking actions, and it's through coming together in solidarity and telling our bosses that, hey, enough's enough. We need to do better, and we can't stretch it out any longer.
That's when we actually have to make sure that we as members are ready to get and demand what we need. And this is where we are still very far apart from our employer, but this is the point where we start talking about strikes.
I want to make sure, first of all, though, that folks recognize what an impasse is, because it's a very important trigger to what's going to happen next. So I'm a hand talker. Follow along. Here we go. We go in asking for wage increases up here. and your employer comes in offering wage increases down here. I know it should be lower, but you get where I'm going. Now, because this is a negotiation, we don't actually go in expecting to get what we're asking for right off the hop. Because that's not the way a negotiation works. It's a give and take, which means that we are prepared to give a little, or be flexible, come down a little bit. We have that same expectation of your employer as well. They come in bottom. We expect them to come up a little bit. Now, we haven't seen it yet. They don't seem to be budging off the 7.5%, but truthfully, we haven't really focused on the monetary just yet. We're hopeful, but again, if we've got a government that is directing bargaining, maybe we shouldn't be holding our breath that they're going to move it all. But either way, we're both going to reach a point, union, employer, where we say, that's it, this is our bottom line. Because we are so far apart right now, we know that we're not going to come together. It means we're going to reach our bottom line, they're going to reach their bottom line, we're going to be stuck here, and this in the middle, folks, is what's called an impasse.
This is the point where we start talking about strikes. And yes, strikes is the word we're using. Even though our employer has the right to lock us out, we're talking strikes. So we do have a legal right to strike in this province. 2014, the Supreme Court gave every single worker across the board, whether you are public sector or otherwise, that legal right, and it is a charter right. And in 2015, the province of Alberta enacted legislation that actually defined how that work can be accomplished.
But a legal strike or an employer lockout can only occur once we've checked off some boxes. And the first box is signing that essential services agreement. So I know for the Government of Alberta agreement, they're getting fairly close on that one. I believe the health sector ones are going to be signed off probably here on the end of the month. The date I was told was either the 25th or 26th is kind of, we're looking at it coming back from the Empire. And so we'll have those ESA agreements in place fairly soon, okay? One ESA is an essential services agreement. It's a contract between the employer and the union that identifies what specific work needs to be done during a strike or a lockout. And that's only to preserve life and limb or the operation of the law.
Now, I want it on the record here that you know, that I know, that all of you are essential. Your union knows you're essential. I know you're essential. We all think you're essential. But when it comes to an essential services agreement, I really want none of you to be essential. That's what we're going for. Because in the event of a work stoppage, those positions that are deemed essential mean that they need to be staffed during the work stoppage, and those folks cannot then participate on a strike line. We want as much participation and as much support as we can get out on that strike line. And so we want to keep those numbers in the ESA as low as possible. Now, you may not think that your employer thinks you're essential, because it doesn't seem that way when you go to work. But for some reason, when we sit down to negotiate an ESA, you're all vitally essential. So, a little mind-boggling. But again, this is how negotiations work. It's quite laughable, actually, because we will be in the midst of negotiating your ESA, and your employer will say, we need 10 members at all time to be on that unit in order to preserve life, limb, and law. We're like, there's 6 working right now. And he didn't bother to even try to call 4 other people. So can you explain that one to me?
We have to have certain things in place. Again, the legislation is very clear that we have to have an essential services agreement in place if we want to get to formal mediation. So when we get to formal mediation, we can talk to a formal mediator, but here's the thing. We're going to have 2 streams that come out of that. Either formal mediation is going to be successful, and if it's successful, we're going to present the members of that bargaining unit a tentative agreement. The members are going to decide. Okay, good to go. hunky-dory, hopefully they agree with their bargaining committee. But if you do not agree with what a formal mediator comes up with, and that is either side, that be us, the employees, or them, the employer, we now have the legal right to take job action. There is a mandatory 2-week cooling down period, at which time they can still continue to bargain. But in that time frame, we're going to be able to start looking at holding a strike vote.
And this is where we will send a ballot to all of the members within that specific bargaining unit and ask them if they are in fact prepared to withdraw their labor or not. It will also come with information on what has transpired during bargaining up until that point so that you can make an informed decision about whether or not you would be in favor of withdrawing your labor. And I strongly encourage you to make an informed decision before you cast your ballot. And recognize that a successful strike vote, an overwhelmingly successful strike vote, in many cases really lights a fire under the employer's butt because they don't want you to walk. And so when we hear about bargaining in the news and the media and it's like, oh, they were in there with their ties undone and they were in there till midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning trying to hammer this out, that is typically happening right after a strike vote. Because if we've got a mandate to strike, then we can serve 72 hours to the employer that says if we don't have a contract within 72 hours, we're going to walk.
This will be really hard for some of us because there's a lot of us in this room that have big hearts and we care about the folks that we're serving, right? We, like I was saying earlier, we do serve people 24/7, 365 in this province. And it's going to be hard for some of us to pull back, right? And to maybe potentially watch patients in a hospital eat cold sandwiches for 4 or 5 days. But we need to. It's important that we withdraw those services and we work to the letter of what the ESA agreements are. Because we need to make it hard on our employers, right? We need to stand together and make it hard on the employers. And that's really one important thing about an ESA strike. Is we want to make it hard on the employers, and then on ourselves, we need to get out there and support our picket lines that are going to go up.
I've given you this stream as it relates to the union side of things. It's the exact same for the employer. And they have the option to lock out employees if they wish to do so. But they have to go through all of the same steps. So there needs to be the 2-week cooling off period. They also need to take a strike vote. It takes them a lot less time to take a strike vote than it does the union because there's typically only a handful of individuals that will need to cast a ballot. But they can do that as well, and they can also they will then provide 72 hours notice if they are in favor of a lockout to the union, and the bargaining will continue during that time. But I don't want anyone to be confused about a strike or an employer lockout. They are essentially one and the same. If an employer locks you out, you are on the strike, and you need to go to a strike line.
This is something new to all of us. We haven't had since 2015 a strike that actually reflected on the SA agreements and on the legislation and our legal right. So all of these big tables, we've done one illegal walkout, many may remember, but we have never done the legal strike route. And when we actually sat down and thought about how that looks for you as members, it's very daunting, and we understand that. But what was done by your provincial executive, which is the governing body of AUPE between conventions, is they actually revisited our strike pay policy. And when they did that, you'll be happy to know that when you are asked to walk a picket line, the first day you hit that picket line, you will be getting strike pay. And that is huge.
So in the event that we take strike action or we are locked out by the employer and we find ourselves on a strike line, members will need to spend 30 hours a week on the strike line. And if they do that, they will be entitled to $700 tax-free with no union dues deduction per week. We mean business, folks.
So I encourage you to go look at your paychecks and say, hey, what do I bring home in 2 weeks, right? Is it $1,400? There's probably people in this room that make less than $1,400 in 2 weeks. And so by us removing that barrier and that mechanism, we're really hoping that our lowest paid members, now don't have to worry about that mortgage payment or worrying about making rent, et cetera. They can actually get out there and fight for the jobs and the wage increases that they deserve to get a living wage in this province.
What was a part of the old policy that has been changed is that there was a 5-day waiting period before. So if the strike was less than 5 days, members never actually achieved the benchmark to receive strike pay. That waiting period has been removed. So if the strike only lasts 1 day and you were on the strike line, you would be entitled to $140. And if it's 2 days, $280. And if it's 3 days, I don't math well, figure it out yourself. But anyway, use your phones. 420, there we go. Someone maths better than me. You get where I'm going. It'll be prorated depending on the length of the strike. Now, please also note that if your employer covers health benefits for you as a part of your benefit package, so prescription drugs or dental coverage, for example, those benefits will continue to be paid as well by the union. Do not come out of your $700. So if we're on strike and you need prescription medication or you need to go to the dentist, you'll still be able to do so.
What we really need now, though, is an obligation from you, this room, and all of our members across the province, is a commitment to fight back. And we are doing it now. And what I'm asking you to do is fight back loud. I'm going to add proud, because I'm a proud AUPE member, publicly, and consistent in our messaging. And again, the reason why we're bringing every sector together in a room at these town halls is that you are all getting the same message, and that is the same message that's being relayed across this province.
The key right now is engagement. I wish every single seat in here was full and we had standing room only, but we don't. And we did pretty good, Red Deer. A lot of you showed up, and I really, really thank you for doing that. But I'm also going to ask every single one of you to go back and talk to at least 1 or 2 people that aren't in this room right now that you work with or that you know as an AUP member and say, hey, this is what I learned. We need to stand together and we need to engage with our union. We need to show up to events and we need to show our employers that we are taking notice of what they're putting out on the table. How can we do that? We can do that right now. A lot of us, and I'm looking out there, we're wearing red, right? It's really making our employers nervous in some cases, right to the point where at a few sites they're saying, no, you can't wear red. And it's like, well, show me in my collective agreement where it says I can't wear red. Our folks in housekeeping, and I'm gonna do my my usual thing here, but we had folks in housekeeping and environmental services, yeah. Their uniforms, they weren't allowed to wear red, so they went and got red hairnets. If you don't work in one of those facilities, think about how much a hairnet's going to grab attention of your employer if you show up in the morning, right? I still want to see this over at Red Deer Polytechnic. I want to see 500 members on the first day of classes walking around with hairnets. I've already bought them. I'm dropping them off.
We need to fight now. Remember when I asked you if you have earned more than 7.5%? Do you think you deserve more than 7.5%? I certainly think you do. But here's the thing, folks. If you want more than 7.5%, we're going to have to do something about it.
How do we get prepared for this? Because it's not just enough to say, we're going to fight when we can. We're going to say, we got to get ready. And how do we get ready? Well, first off, we are talking about doing rallies in every community where we've had a town hall. We are working with members in those communities to actually build that momentum, build that little bit of take that fear out of actually getting on a picket line and get a little experience doing it. And we are looking at taking back our communities by having these rallies, and we're sending a message.
50+ town halls across the province. It's going to mean 50+ rallies are going to follow in each of those communities. So, time for action. We need to act.
So there's all these opportunities for us to show that we're engaged with one another. And another one that we have is, where are my lawn sign people? There we go. So we have these lawn signs made up that say we support public services. And we're really asking every single person here to take one of those home tonight and stake that in their front yard. And then when you're done, and take a selfie with it and send us that photo on photos@aupe.org. You can email that to us. And what we're trying to do right now is paint our social media with pictures of lawn signs.
If you are taking notes, this is something you'll want to write down. We will be holding a rally in the city here, Saturday, September 7th, from 11:30 to 1:30.
Here in Calgary, we're looking at September 7th. Here in Calgary, here in Edmonton. This is the culmination of all the rallies that will be happening mostly in July, but some will actually occur in August.
Is we're going to hold 2 of the loudest and public rallies in this province. I know we are. We're going to do them at the same time. We're going to do them in Calgary, and we're going to do them in Edmonton. You betcha. We want you all to come regardless of where you live. So we're going to host basically a summer of smaller rallies in the smaller communities that will in fact include other Labour allies as well as community members. And if you have kids and dogs, bring them. They're a big hit at rallies, so dress them up.
You got to remember, the stronghold of government power right now is rural Alberta. And so we really need to make sure that we're pushing back in rural Alberta. We're telling this government that they've gone too far, that we need to make a living wage, because guess what? We are everyday Albertans as well. We are taxpayers, and we need to make sure that we're keeping that money in our communities. That job security piece is so important, because when we lose those to private contractors, typically those private contractors are from outside of Alberta. And what that does is it takes our taxpayers' dollars and it takes it outside of our communities. It takes it outside of our province. It takes it outside of our country in some cases.
We all have a part to play. So I want you guys to think about how we can do that. First off, we have to talk to each other. We have to spread the word amongst our coworkers, our neighbors, our communities. We actually have to commit to getting to those rallies, being a participant. And we really need people to step up to help us with the organization and the execution of those rallies.
The reality, though, is that we can't hold a rally every week because they're very labor intensive. But we still need to be fighting for a good collective agreement every day. And I am serious when I say every day. And so I want to give you a few ideas of what that looks like and what you can start doing now. I want each of you to look like a proud AUPE member every single time you go to work. Every time. And when I say a proud AUPE member, I want you to think red. I want you to find a way to incorporate red into your work attire every time you go to work.
And tell me why you're wearing red.
We support our bargaining team.
Bargaining, yes, yes. Look at all these nice, wonderful people wearing their red here today. This is what the message is. And I actually want to give kudos to our Local 9 brothers and sisters and fellow workers. They actually came up with this as part of their strategic plan, is how do we send a message to our employer. And I am so proud of AUPE, our membership across the board, who have taken this on and ran with it. I love it. So But it's not just about, hey, shirts or things. Some of us work in jobs where that's not possible. But here's some other things. You came in today, you got these little wristbands. You can wear a wristband on your wrist. Some of the locals have produced red lanyards. Those of you who wear lanyards in your work sites that say, I support my bargaining team. You can have a red water bottle. You can wear red shoelaces. You can wear red socks. We have members in our general support services wearing red hairnets in their department because they have different colored and they have to wear a specific uniform. The message is being sent.
The second thing I want you to do is I want you to gather, and I want you to gather often. And when you gather, I want you to advertise that you're gathering. If you feed them, they will come.
Nothing makes employers more nervous than see a bunch of members talking about negotiations. What are they talking? What are they doing? Call them what you want. Grab and goes, lunch and learns, packs and snacks, whatever it takes. I mean, there are so many ways that we can engage our members, give them the information they need, but do it often. Plan those meetings so that you actually can sit down with members, give them the information that is really important to them, direct them where they need to go to get more information if they need to, help get them signed up to that My AUPE account, because that's going to make a difference as well.
But folks, we need to recognize that we are currently in a situation that is an opportunity with 82,000 of us in bargaining. 250,000 people who work in the public sector across this province will be engaged in bargaining in 2024 as well. But we are the largest. They're looking at us to set the way. We will be the example in this province when it comes to bargaining. So we need to do all of the things that we've talked about here tonight, and then some.
This is the time for action, and this is the time for us to do it together. So thank you, everybody. Now it's going to be your turn.